Aveline Grandpré, the assassin of New Orleans, liberator of slaves, she purged her hometown of the Templar influence. Her continuous efforts to try to free the slaves made her name very well known amongst them. Her reputation and fame extended even to Newport. Some people only considered her a legend, a fable, that she wasn't real, but these people have never met her before. She even worked with Connor Kenway, who later became the mentor of the Colonial Brotherhood. But the question today is, what exactly happened to Aveline after the events of Liberation? We know she was still active after the events of Liberation because of the DLC storyline we had in Assassin's Creed 4. But even with the DLC, we still don't know what exactly happened to her, besides just being an active assassin in New Orleans and around the world. There has to be more, right? So follow me along the journey to try to find out what happened to her and what her legacy was. Beware of the spoilers across the entire franchise. In the first Lost Descendants novel written by Matthew J. Kirby, we follow the assassin Varius in the 19th century during the New York Drafts riots. The assassin Varius has a meeting with his black mentor about the state of New York City, the dress riots, their arch enemies, the Templar Order, and a piece of Eden. Of course, this is all interesting, but the thing that interested me the most was when the mentor said, "Everything we have achieved, everything my grandmother fought for in New Orleans, it will all be lost." The mentor is black. He is an assassin. He had a grandmother in New Orleans. Doesn't that remind you of someone named Aveline? He could have talked about any city really. He could have talked about Adewale. But he chose to talk about New Orleans. This makes me theorize. This is the grandson of Aveline. The mentor and Aveline both have family in New Orleans. They are both black and they are both assassins. The New York dress riots happen in the 19th century and Liberation's storyline takes place in the 18th century. There is enough time here for Aveline to become a grandmother. And it is true that parents train their children in the assassin ways, like the Templars do with their children. J. Patrick Cormac trained his son and his grandson to become Templars. So why wouldn't Aveline train her grandson to become an assassin? The novel does explore themes like you don't have to be like your parents, you make your own choices in life. You are you decide who you are. And we meet many people throughout the novel whose life has been decided by the assassins, Templars or someone else. This gives me more reason to believe that this mentor is the grandson of Aveline. Unfortunately though for us, this is everything we have on him and I do wish that we knew what his second name was. Or talked about his grandfather. Fortunately though, Aveline does have a descendant in the modern day era and he was the first test subject of Warren Fiddick's Animus program. We don't know how he looks like or what his name was. After reliving some of Aveline's memories, he starts describing to Warren Fiddick how it felt like to be in her shoes. Of course Warren Fiddick was fascinated what his first test subject was describing to him, but unfortunately though, one day it went wrong. Subject 1 died of a seizure in the Animus due to the undiscovered danger of overexposure to the device. And undiagnosed epileptic. Oops. This incident almost stopped the Animus project from continuing. Warren Fiddick of course didn't want to stop the Animus project and offered himself up to be the second test subject inside the Animus. Not surprisingly though, but Warren Fiddick was related to one of Joan of Arc's executioners. Does Aveline have more modern day descendants? I don't know. This will most likely stay a mystery to us. Eventually though, Abstergo Entertainment made a full-fledged video game on Aveline's memories from Subject 1. They did censor it a bit here and there to make it more appropriate for the audience. I just want to point out here that Abstergo could have done any other assassin, but they went with Aveline. The reason why I believe they went with Aveline is because Altair, Ezio and Connor are big freedom fighters. While Aveline is mostly just focused on liberating slaves and doesn't really talk much about freedom or the creed itself. Nor does she talk that much about the Templar Order. So for Abstergo Entertainment, this was a really easy job to censor.
As Aveline matured, a new side emerged. A well-mannered and considerate lady of poise and compassion. Aveline came to embrace a new mentor, her stepmother, Madeleine Delisle, a tireless fighter for the rights of slaves.
Thank you, Madeleine.
With some editing to prioritize this relationship, we feel Aveline's story will more than meet our needs. Our team recommends a go on this property. Get this one to market quickly.
Her biggest influence in history, if you ask me, is that she became a legend amongst the slave communities. In my honest opinion, more of a story that you have to rise up for yourself, which I find really inspiring. But I'm pretty sure that most people in the modern day era in the Assassin's Creed universe think of her nothing more than just a video game character. Well, I do think some people still talk about her as a legend or just as a fable, but unfortunately though in the Assassin's Creed universe, most people outside of the orders of Assassins and Templars just know her as the censored version of Abstergo Industries. So now I have all the facts on Aveline and all the theories. What do I think happened to her after the events of Assassin's Creed Liberation and the DLC storyline in Assassin's Creed 4? We know Aveline was still active after the events of Liberation. We know she has a modern day descendant, and we have a mentor in the Assassin's Creed novels. And she was also very close to Geralt. They seemed pretty close over the storyline of the game, like with Sophia and Ezio were in Assassin's Creed Revelations. It's a bit of the same situation here. Ezio and Aveline were both assassins and do, well, of course, assassin stuff. And Ezio's wife stayed inside and did something else like reading books. And Geralt did the exact same thing, but so long it doesn't require him to use parkour skills or killing people. I believe that Aveline and Geralt became very close after the events of Liberation and that they got a child together. Aveline trained her children and her grandson in the assassin ways and still liberated slaves until the last days of her life. When she became older and wasn't able to use parkour skills, she used business tactics, dirty tricks, and ordered assassins to liberate slaves until the last days of her life. This is what I assume what happened to her after the events of Liberation, and there is enough evidence to support my theory. I do hope she gets a sequel one day where Ubisoft will flesh her character more out and where she works with Connor Kenway. But unfortunately, I doubt that will ever happen. Ubisoft hasn't made a sequel to Shay Patrick Cormac's storyline. They also didn't make a sequel to Arno Victor Dorian and a few other characters throughout the franchise, so most of these characters' fates are left open for years now. And when we found out what happened to Connor Kenway 5 years after Assassin's Creed 3 got released, it was done in a comic book. So if Aveline will ever return, I'm 100% certain it will be done in a comic book. Most likely in Assassin's Creed Reflections comic book series. Now that we are at the end of the video, I want to say this video was a suggestion by someone in the comment section, so I hope he at least got something out of it, and everyone who is interested in Aveline. But because her fate was such a mystery, I needed to expand a bit on it here and there. I hope you have a fun day or night wherever you are and enjoy this video.
Hidden in plain sight, striking fear and steel into the hearts of our oppressors.
Elegant and deadly, just like my lady.